The Israeli foreign minister closed the Israeli embassy in Dublin, stating, and I quote, that Ireland has crossed every red line. Really? So Israel continues genocide, starves and forcibly displaces a people, colonizes and annexes land. But it is Ireland which has crossed every red line for denouncing these crimes, for insisting on respect for international law and for human rights. You must be kidding me. How much more absurd can this situation get? How much more indecent can Israeli officials get? Let me repeat that there will be no peace in our region without the peaceful settlement of the question of Palestine. We are out of time, but are not out of options. We are not powerless. Occupation, war, and death are not our only horizon.
I now give the floor to the permanent observer of the Observer State of Palestine.
Madam President, let me at the outset thank the Council members who will be departing at the end of the year, namely Malta, Mozambique, Switzerland, Ecuador, and Japan, for their relentless efforts to uphold international law, including through achieving a ceasefire, the necessary prerequisite for everything else the Council has called to achieve. Allow me also to say that while we reject the U.S. resorting several times to the veto over the last year, I want to commend your personal engagement and your constructive approach, always seeking to move the needle in the right direction, in manners that the wider public is unaware of. Allow me also to thank the briefers to whom we listened carefully, and to thank the Secretary General and his representative, Khalid Khayari, ASG, for the report on implementation of Security Council Resolution 2334 and for their diligent efforts. Madam President, another year is ending and the massacres have yet to end. The Council adopted a year ago, almost day for day, Resolution 2720. And still, a year later, starvation and famine are an integral part of the Israeli assault on our people. In Gaza, every Palestinian life has either been upended or completely ended. More than 150,000 casualties, Palestinian children, women, and men murdered, wounded, maimed by a ruthless Israeli military onslaught by air, land, and sea that continues as we speak, claiming more lives every single day. More than 17,000 Palestinian children have been orphaned or separated from their parents. Our children now represent the largest cohort of child amputees per capita in the whole world. Over 12,000 Palestinians are detained. Many of them have been abducted, subjected to torture, sexual abuse, and even killed. Thousands more civilians are unaccounted for. The torment of those who survive untold. Trauma and terror, destruction and devastations inflicted on the Palestinian people with no end in sight. A mass collective punishment unseen in our world in this century. Over a year ago, and from this same chamber, we called for a ceasefire that would allow Palestinian and Israeli families to be reunited in life, not death. We called for respect of civilian life, all civilian life. Let me repeat, we called for respect of civilian life, all civilian life, not preferring some over others. We warned of what would come if a ceasefire was not imposed. And yet, only a few weeks ago, another draft resolution put forward by the E10 and calling for an immediate, unconditional, and permanent ceasefire, which enjoyed the support of 14 Security Council members, was vetoed by the United States. The General Assembly, acting under Uniting for Peace and taking action where the Council failed to demand this immediate and unconditional and permanent ceasefire. And we call yet again on the Council, if such a ceasefire does not come about in the coming days, and we hope it does, we ask you to act under Chapter 7 to demand an immediate and unconditional ceasefire. That is the only way to bring to an end to the massacres, to secure the release of prisoners and hostages, to ensure humanitarian aid reaches all those in need, to end the forcible displacement of our people and annexation of our land, and to ensure the full withdrawal of Israeli occupation forces. Madam President, this Council adopted 8 years ago the landmark Resolution 2334 to put an end to the land grab and to pave the way to ending the Israeli occupation and achieving a just peace. But unfortunately and expectedly, Israel persisted in pursuing its colonial agenda, flagrantly and wantonly breaching international law and UN resolutions. And this Council and all states are yet to adopt the measures that hold Israel accountable for its crimes, bring them to a halt, and reverse its unlawful annexation of Palestinian land. Since the onset of the occupation, Israel has confined Palestinians in the occupied Palestinian territory to the areas already built up and inhabited. Only 13% of East Jerusalem and 40% of the rest of the West Bank. The aim has always been to ensure that Israel could seize maximum Palestinian land with minimum Palestinians. But even that was not enough, and Israel decided to violently displace and replace our people, to forcibly displace Palestinian families and communities, to demolish their homes, to build settlements in the heart of our cities, and in a manner to destroy the territorial integrity of our state and to fragment our people and our land. The ICJ has stated in no uncertain terms, and I quote, "The sustained abuse by Israel of its position as an occupying power through annexation and an assertion of permanent control over the occupied Palestinian territory and continued frustration of the right of the Palestinian people to self-determination violates fundamental principles of international law, and renders Israelis' presence in the occupied Palestinian territory unlawful. End of view. End of quotation. The court called for an end of Israelis' unlawful presence in the occupied Palestinian territory as rapidly as possible, and reminded all states and the UN of their obligations in this regard. Only resolute action and measures of accountability by the international community as a whole shall lead Israel to stop its methodical destruction of the Palestinian people, of the Palestinian state, of the two-state solution, and of the prospects of peace in our region. In this regard, we await the report of the Secretary General, we expect in a few days, on implementation of Resolution ES-10/24 and ES-10/26 to inform future action by the membership. We will study it thoroughly, we hope you do, and then we will decide on the next steps forward. We welcome the launch of the Global Alliance for the implementation of the two-state solution and the decision of the General Assembly to hold a high-level international conference in June 2025, and I think my French colleague referred to it, on the implementation of the relevant UN resolutions pertaining to the peaceful settlement of the question of Palestine and the two-state solutions. We call on all states to act without delay in line with their obligations under the Charter and international law to bring an end to Israel's unlawful presence in the occupied Palestinian territory and to ensure the realization of the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people, including their right to self-determination and independence. Madam President, Israel, in parallel to its full-fledged assault against the Palestinian people, is attacking all those trying to support Palestinian rights and to save Palestinian lives. We have seen it with the UN and especially UNRWA, and we welcome the overwhelming support by the General Assembly for the agency in the face of relentless Israeli attacks. And we have seen it against international NGOs, most recently Amnesty International, following their report concluding that Israel is committing genocide in the Gaza Strip. And we have seen it against states, most recently against Ireland. The Israeli foreign minister closed the Israeli embassy in Dublin, stating, and I quote, that Ireland has crossed every red line. Really? So Israel continues genocide, starves and forcibly displaces a people, colonizes and annexes land. But it is Ireland which has crossed every red line for denouncing these crimes, for insisting on respect for international law and for human rights. You must be kidding me. How much more absurd can this situation get? How much more indecent can Israeli officials get? Israel has now accused the UN, almost every state on earth, the ICJ, the ICC, the world's most renowned NGOs, public figures, and moral voices of our time of anti-Semitism. Jews around the world cannot be held responsible for Israel's actions, nor can Israel speak in their name or use them as shield to deflect condemnation of its violations. We reject this deliberate conflation between the actions of a state, or should I say the crimes of a state, and those who belong to a given faith. And we should all consider that this is dangerous and a terrible disservice to the fight against anti-Semitism and must demand it stop. Ireland and other countries around the world have shown that they will not be deterred nor distracted by Israelis' baseless attacks and smear campaigns. They will hold to their principled positions despite the bullying, threats, and harassment. We salute all those who are standing up for freedom, justice, and peace, many informed by their own histories and their own struggles, and are pushed to action by their commitment to international law and to human rights. Madam President, those who think they can end this conflict by taking more Palestinian lives and unlawfully colonizing more Palestinian land, or that they can bypass or ignore the Palestinian question and somehow establish peace in our region, are delusional. They are ignoring 77 years of history that demonstrates that there is no way around the Palestinian issue, and that there will be no peace in our region without the peaceful settlement of the question of Palestine. Let me repeat that there will be no peace in our region without the peaceful settlement of the question of Palestine. We are out of time, but are not out of options. We are not powerless. Occupation, war, and death are not our only horizon. But we all need to take the required actions to bring them to an end. No more delays, no more excuses, no more half measures, no more strong speeches and weak actions. Let me repeat that. No more strong speeches and weak actions. Action speaks louder than words. This is a time to show resolve, to be guided by moral clarity, and to lead by example. We call on each state to examine what more they can and must do to uphold international law and to implement UN resolutions. And we tell them they have a responsibility before history and humanity, for our people, for all peoples, to act now so that freedom, justice, and peace can prevail. Act now to end the massacre and genocide in Gaza, to end the ethnic cleansing and apartheid, to end this illegal occupation, to end the conflict, and to achieve peace. We ask for nothing more than the rights international law guaranteed to our people. But we also cannot accept anything less. The Palestinian people need your continued support and solidarity, now more than ever. Please do not forsake them. And I thank you very much, Madam President.